record. Okay, so this is the sensation or brain and sensation. And this is a reminder, we already did this before, that we did it in the nervous system, that the nervous system is central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is brain and spinal cord, and peripheral nervous system is these nerves that goes out of the central nervous system communicating with other parts. Um, and we discussed the details. The peripheral nervous system coming from the brain is called and cranial nerves, and the nerves of the peripheral nervous system coming from the spinal cord are called spinal nerve. And we already talked about in different ways. Is it somatic? Is it autonomic? And so on. Both the brain and the spinal cord, which is together is the central nervous system, are covered by three layers for protection. The innermost is called pia, which means the delicate, because it is in contact with the brain tissues, which is extremely delicate. It's almost jello-like, a little bit solid than that, but almost. So pia is the innermost, followed by arachnoid. This is the middle one, and then the dura. This is the outermost one, and then the bone outside of that. And in between, right here in this space, which is between the arachnoid and the pia, we call it subarachnoid. This is where the fluid of the brain and the spinal cord, both of them, that's known as CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid of the brain or around the brain and the spinal cord. It circulates right here. So three layers, pia, arachnoid, dura, from inside to outside, like your undershirt, your shirt, your jacket. Undershirt, pia, delicate. Shirt, arachnoid. Outermost, durable one, like your jacket, durable, tough. And in between the arachnoid and the pia, which is subarachnoid, this is where we have the CSF to act as a cushion for protection and to act as a cushion. So here it is. Here's the brain and surrounded by the three layers. And the CSF is there for physical protection, to act as a cushion. And also, it contains oxygen and nutrients and chemicals and so on. If you look at the different parts of the brain, and this is something that you need to know, you will know that this, when we talked about this, but reminder, this here is the cerebrum. And then this blue here is cerebellum. This one right here is a diencephalon. It contains thalamus and hypothalamus. And then 1, 2, 3. Those three together are called brainstem. This one is called midbrain, pons, and medulla. Midbrain, pons, and medulla. After that, we have the spinal cord. We talked about the different parts inside the brain before, and we mentioned the cranial nerves are the nerves that are coming out of the brain. Spinal nerves are the nerves coming out of the spinal cord. So cranial nerves are these branching nerves coming from the brain, and spinal nerves coming from the spinal cord, and together we call those peripheral nervous system. And we talked about this central part here. There is thalamus and hypothalamus and pituitary gland. If you guys still remember, we talked about those in the endocrine system. So hypothalamus is part of the endocrine system, which is the head of the endocrine system, and also part of the central nervous system. Midbrain, if we talk about the brain stem, it's midbrain, which is this orange here, followed by pons, followed by medulla oblongata. The three together are called brain stem. You do need to know that. One more time. This big part here is called, let's say what we're talking about in this picture here is the brain. What are the parts of the brain? This big part here, cerebrum. This tiny brain, smaller brain here, cerebellum. Here in the middle of the brain, diencephalon, which is thalamus hypothalamus. Last part, brain stem. Brain stem is midbrain, which is the orange here, and that will be followed by thalamus, brain stem, midbrain, thalamus, I'm sorry, medulla oblongata, midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata. Three together, brain stem. And these are the different parts of the brain. There is some stuff here that's not very important. I just want you to know the names. We talked about cerebrum, which is this big part. This in the middle here, it was thalamus, hypothalamus. This orange right here, this is the cerebellum. This here is the pons, and this is the medulla oblongata. The brain stem, generally speaking, is controlling the autonomic reflexes. You can call it autonomic reflexes. What are the autonomic reflexes? Autonomic is coming from autonomy or automatic, which are all involuntary organs in your body. This is where it's controlled. Your heart, your swallowing, your breathing, your digestion, it's everything in that brainstem, and I'm not going to go much into the details. Cerebellum, on the other hand, is coordinating the voluntary movements. You guys know already that I'm focusing on the main parts. Okay, so follow me as we go, and I'm going to cover and focus more on the most important parts, not all the details. This is what you have to know, and this is the core of the chapter. So here is the cerebrum itself. One more time. The brain inside your skull is cerebrum, cerebellum, diencephalon, brainstem. Cerebrum, cerebellum, diencephalon, brainstem. Cerebrum, this orange here. This is the largest. Cerebellum is this in the back here. Diencephalon is inside. You don't see it from this view, which is this. No, not this. Right here. This part in the middle here. So here is the cerebrum, and the cerebrum is the largest. It's the two cerebral hemispheres inside your skull, and this is the largest part of the brain, cerebrum. The cerebrum is two parts or two layers. The outer one that you see here, the orange, the cover is called cortex, and this is non-myelinated, and I'm assuming that you guys know what's myelinated and unmyelinated. We talked about that. We said the axons of the neurons, some of them are surrounded by myelin sheath, the cover, and some of them are not surrounded by myelin sheath. The ones that are surrounded are called myelinated. The one that's not, unmyelinated. This cortex is unmyelinated, which is gray in color. The inside of the cerebrum is myelinated, which is white matter. Again, I'm not going to go into the details, but for the nervous system, the central nervous system oversees the whole nervous system. Brain is higher than the spinal cord. So the brain is like the manager as compared to the spinal cord. In the brain itself, the cortex is the highest of all. Like this is your consciousness. This is the highest activities, the highest control, the highest management. So brain is higher than the spinal cord in the management. And in the brain, cortex is higher than the inside of the brain itself. There is right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere, and they are connected to each other. And the right have functions that are different than the left side. But generally speaking, the more concrete functions are in the left side if you are right-handed. So if I'm right-handed, my left hemisphere is dominant, doing the more complicated things, and it's the dominant. If I'm left-handed, which is minority, your right hemisphere is the dominant one. So remember this. Right and left, is it the same? In the structure, yes, they look exactly the same. In the function, no. One is dominant than the other. Which one is dominant? It depends. If you're right-handed or left-handed. If you're right-handed, your left hemisphere is dominant. If you're left-handed, your right hemisphere is dominant, doing the more complicated job. This cortex, the cover of the brain, is not smooth. There are some elevations like this, look at this, and some depressions. Elevations, depressions. Elevations are called gyri, and the furrows or the depressions are called sulci. So the bulges, gyri. The depressions or the furrows, sulci. These are the different lobes of the brain. If you guys still remember the bone, we did the bone. Remember, this was the frontal bone. This was the parietal bone. This right here is called the temporal bone, and in the back, occipital bone. Since the brain is covered by the skull, it get the same names. So frontal lobe is the lobe of the brain that's facing the frontal bone. Parietal lobe is the cortex that's covered by the parietal bone. Temporal lobe covered by temporal bone. Occipital lobe covered by the occipital bone. And for your information, the temporal lobe is responsible for hearing. Occipital lobe is responsible for vision. Parietal, general sensations. So here it is, the cortex is gray matter, while the inside is white matter. What's the gray matter? Unmyelinated. The gray is the natural color of the axon. It is gray, like the naked axon. If it is covered by that myelin, which is white, now it's called white matter. The hemispheres, as I mentioned, is receiving information from the opposite side. Like you're right-handed, whatever happened in the right, go to the left. Whatever happen in the left, it go to the right. Which one is dominant? It depends. If you're right-handed, it's the left. If you are left-handed, it's the right. So now, beside the structure of the nervous system that we briefly discussed it, now the very, very important part are these sensations. So if you touch something, for example, or if there is like a mosquito that bites you or something, this is going to activate a receptor to receive the signal. The nerve will take it from there, which is called sensory nerve or afferent, and it will take it to your central nervous system, brain, and spinal cord. And then you're going to take an action. You decide what to do, another nerve will take that motor command, which is called efferent or motor nerve, and go to the effector like you're going to move your hand. The effector here is muscle. And I'm reviewing and refreshing your information. We talked about this before. So here is the other side. Brain will process the information. It will send an impulse through the spinal cords and then the efferent nerve. And the muscles are going to like contract, which is called the effector. We discussed that. So there are different types of receptors. What are these different types? This is very important. We have different types of receptors that we're going to discuss in details. Whatever these receptors are, when you stimulate the receptors, you're going to send the sensory information through the afferent or the sensory nerve that goes to the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord. You process the information, you decide what to do, and you send the motor command or the impulse through the efferent, which is called motor. Efferent with E, exit. Afferent with A, axis. Afferent, axis. Efferent, E, exit. Just to remind you or to help you remember. So efferent, this is the motor command. It's going to take orders to body organs. This is divided into somatic if you're going to the skeletal muscles, or autonomic if you're going to anywhere else, anything that's involuntary. And you can either do some sympathetic or parasympathetic, and we talked about those before. Now these, or let me go back here, these receptors, we need to know the details. Receptors. There are photoreceptors, and obviously photo, obviously for vision. Chemoreceptors respond to change in chemistry. Osmoreceptor respond to osmotic pressure, which is basically the concentration of the blood, the concentration of the fluid of the blood. Is it too concentrated? Is it low concentration? If it is more concentrated, it's more osmotic pressure. Nociceptors, noci means pain. You do need to know this. Thermo, obviously, thermo means temperature. So these are the temperature receptors. Mechano, the name give it away, mechanical receptors. So we have mechanoreceptors, mechanical, thermoreceptors, temperature, nociceptors, pain, chemoreceptors, chemistry, osmoreceptors, osmotic pressure or concentration, photoreceptors for vision. Which sensations are considered mechano, or which sensations that stimulate these mechanical receptors, mechanoreceptors? Touch and pressure. Yes, when you touch, when you do pressure, you're changing, you're doing mechanical movement. So you're pressing on something. This is mechanical. Baroreceptors. Baro means pressure. There are receptors on our carotid artery here and aorta. We talked about that. But there are some of them that are pressure. Baro means pressure. So obviously pressure, mechano. When you stretch your muscles, stretch, mechanical movement. Auditory, in your ears. How is that mechanical? Yes, because when you hear something, and we will talk about this, the sound waves are going to do mechanical movement. So it's mechano. Balance receptor in the air. Same thing. When you move your head, you're trying to make balance, and you're moving, which is mechanical movement. Your receptors inside. Thermoreceptors, easy. Temperature. Nausea means pain. Chemo detect chemical changes. Where? There are different ones that you have to know. Internal chemoreceptors. These are receptors internal, means inside. Inside what? Your carotid artery here and your aorta. And they detect change in the chemistry of the blood. What do you mean the chemistry of the blood? It means oxygen, carbon dioxide, chemicals in the blood. Taste in the tongue, it works with chemoreceptors. How is that? Yes, because when you taste something, when you put something in your mouth and you taste it, there are some fluids that goes into the tongue, which is chemicals to stimulate the taste receptors. Same thing when you smell. If you don't know that, this is what actually happened. If I get like a flower or a perfume or cologne or something, and I try and start to smell it, what happened here is there are some chemicals that evaporate and go inside your nose. So it's chemoreceptors. Osmo, the name gave it away, osmotic pressure, which is the water volume and the concentration. Photoreceptors, the name gave it away, photo, it's for vision. So what happened to these receptors is a stimulus come, which the stimulus will create energy that activate the receptors, and the receptors, whatever the receptors are, there are so many receptors, and the receptors will get this, will receive the sensation, which is um, whatever the stimulus coming, can be mechanical sensation, it can be chemical sensation, whatever the sensation is. When you detect what kind of sensation or what is it, this is called perception. Like when you eat an apple, this is sensation. You sense it. But if you translate what you're eating and you know what is it, this is called perception. So we always use receptor, afferent, or sensory, going to the nervous system, central nervous system, I mean, processing, sending an impulse or motor command that go through efferent, exit, motor. Actually, it is the opposite, I'm sorry. So sensation, afferent, central nervous system, you decide. And then the green one is efferent, which is exit, motor. Go to the effector, which is the muscle, and you move away. So remember, in this scenario, what kind of sensation is that? You step on something here. Sensation is pain. Uh, Perception is what exactly, what kind of pain? It is like cut pain or sharp pain, or you know that you're stepping on a nail, for example. You can also do projection, which is you can tell where is it, like what kind of sensation in this scenario. Pain. What kind of pain? A nail. I stepped on a nail. A cut, sharp pain. Yeah, where is it exactly? In my foot. This is called projection. Sensory adaptation is when you get used to it, which is, of course, it's not in pain. Like, for example, like I wear reading glasses a lot of time. So if I keep it for an hour or something, sometimes I forget. Like, am I wearing my, oh, yes, here it is. Why? Because it's not painful and it is continuous. I wear it for an hour and it's not painful. Another thing, what if you wear a hat and keep it for some time? Is the hat painful? No. Is it continuous? You keep it for a long time? Yes. That's it. For those two reasons, we get the sensory adaptation. We get adapted to that sensation. So we get used to it. Another example. If there is some bad smell in your house, you can get used to it. So you're like, if I ask you, do you smell something? No, I don't smell anything. And then somebody come from outside and tell you, what is this? There is something that smells in here. No, I don't smell anything. Yes, you don't smell, not because there is nothing there. There is, but you got used to it. Translation, you got adapted to it, which is called sensory adaptation. The person coming from outside is not adapted yet. If he stayed with you for some time, he will get adapted and he will forget it. And then when somebody else, a third person come, both of you, don't you smell anything? No. Yes, because both of you now are having the sensory adaptation. You got adapted to it. When a signal come, if this signal is strong, it will create stronger response and stronger potential. If it is weak, it's going to create a weak stimulus. Like if I'm whispering versus if I'm talking loud versus if I'm talking about in the microphone, these are three different levels that will create three different responses. For the sensory system, um, the impulse travel to the brain. The receptors here are mechanoreceptors, thermoreceptors, nociceptors, mechanical, thermo, temperature, noci, which is pain, translation pain, chemo, chemistry, osmotic, water volume, and osmotic pressure, which is concentration, and photoreceptors. Of course, this is for vision. A strong signal cause uh, fire more impulses, obviously. The stronger the stimulus, the more sensory receptors response. So the response is more. Somatic sensation is that just regular sensation that we all have, like touch, pain, pressure, and so on. Um, this is too much details. So all what we need to know here is somatic versus visceral pain. Somatic sensation, visceral versus visceral sensation. For example, pain here. Somatic, soma. This is something coming from the body. Visceral, meaning muscle and bone and skin. Visceral is coming from the viscera. What's the viscera? The viscera is anything else inside. Okay? Like for pain, for example, which is the nociceptors, you can receive somatic pain from your bone, your joint, your muscle. This is called somatic sensation. Anything inside, like heart, lung, stomach, intestine, urinary system, bladder, anything else inside. This is visceral pain. So there is somatic pain, and in this case, we're talking about pain as an example. Pain can be somatic and visceral. Somatic, soma, body, referring to what? To the bone and the muscles. Bone, muscles, and joints. Okay? And also include the skin. So everything outside. Skin, muscle, bone. That's all outside. Inside, like inside your trunk, this is visceral. Because your viscera means your organs inside your trunk. This is what viscera means. Viscera means organ. Visceral pain means the pain coming from the organs. What are the organs? Everything inside your trunk. Heart, lung, intestine, urinary system, reproductive system, digestive system, respiratory system, anything else. There are messenger neurotransmitters inside our brain. Some of them mediate the pain, and some of them lower the pain. This is not something that we need to expand on. Uh, Only if you're interested. There is something called bradykinin, which is this. This is the one that activate the pain, and the opposite is endorphin. Endorphin, doesn't it sound like morphine? Endorphin, morphine. Yes, it's like internal morphine, kind of. It's not exactly, but this is something that lower our pain. That's only if you're interested, but otherwise, what we already talked about is enough. Now, refer pain. What's a referred pain? You refer the pain as if it's coming from somewhere else other than the location in which there is an issue. If you have an issue in your heart, you refer the pain, or you think that the pain is coming from your shoulder and from your left arm. But do you have actually anything in your uh, like pectoral region, in your shoulder, in your arm? Do you have any issues? Absolutely nothing. It's completely fine. We don't have any issues. Your brain think that it's coming from here. And if you are interested to know, it's simply because sensation from the heart and the sensations from the left shoulder and left arm, they travel together. And when they go the brain, they are close enough that this confuse the brain. So the brain like gets pain impulse or pain sensation. And because they are very close to each other, the brain is kind of confused. Brain doesn't know exactly what is it coming from. So the brain will now have to choose. This is either coming from my heart or coming from my left shoulder and left arm. Which more is more frequent? Of course, heart pain is not something frequent. How many times did you get heart pain? Maybe never, maybe once. But how many times did you get shoulder pain? A lot. Okay. So the brain will think it is coming or will refer it to the left shoulder, left arm. Okay. Actually, it's the left pectoral region, which is this part of the chest here, left shoulder, left arm, which is this. Look at this blue here. So this is the heart, but is there is an issue in the heart? Yes, there is a big issue in the heart. If there is anything in your left shoulder, left arm, no, there is nothing. But again, your brain refer it to, okay? And this is something like, I always say that in a class, like if I'm in a class and there is somebody like in the back who's talkative and disruptive, and then if I'm writing something on the board and I hear sound, I will say, John, stop talking. Uh, did you see him? No. But because most likely it's him, I will refer the noise as if it's coming from him. So this is the same thing. The brain will refer the pain as if it's coming from the left shoulder. And this is just an example. There are a lot of those, but we are not going to go into all these details. If you're interested, take a look at it. But just as an example, your other shoulder is the right shoulder is referring the gallbladder and liver, just as an example. But again, I'm not going to go much into the details. I want you to understand the concept. So here it is. Look at this. This is the skin of the left shoulder, left pectoral region, and the left arm. And this is the sensation coming from the heart. Look, they go very close to each other and they travel together. So the brain will be confused and it will refer it as if it's coming from somewhere else. Um, if you're interested to know, there is something called phantom pain that if somebody have his legs amputated, Um, sometimes you still get or you feel like there is a sensation coming from that, and that's why sometimes people after amputation they like they don't even know until they see, because they still receive some sort of sensation. Again, this is just if you're interested to know. It's not a big deal. It's referred pain is the one that I want you to know, which is projection of pain projecting to the skin if it is originated from somewhere else. This is basically what it is. So this was for the pain receptors or nociceptors. Chemoreceptors, they detect chemicals. And again, perception is you tell exactly what it is, not just you're creating a signal. This is just sensation. So for example, again, this is what I want you to know. Chemoreceptors, give me examples. Or what is it? Where does it come from? Here, chemoreceptors in the carotid artery and aorta. This is one. Number two, taste sensation is chemoreceptors. Number three, uh, smell sensation is the third one. You have three sources of the chemoreceptors. This is the most important thing. We talked about it in the beginning. So taste receptors, what is this? This is chemical receptors, chemoreceptors. What kind of primary taste that we can taste? You can taste when I give you something like eat this or taste this and tell me what is it. You can tell it is sweet or sour, it's salty or bitter. And there is one more that's called umami, which is basically the beef and chicken broth. It's a very special one. So these are the five different sensations. And obviously, these taste receptors are located in the dorsum of the tongue. Where is the dorsum? Is it the upper or the lower surface? The upper. I know you might think that the lower one is the dorsum. It's the opposite. The upper one is the dorsum. This is the back. Because if you roll your tongue backward like this is what you see, the undersurface. So this is the ventral. The dorsum is the upper. And this dorsum contain these taste buds that contain the taste receptors. And again, it is chemoreceptors. Smell. This is the second one that is also chemoreceptors. Why did you call it chemoreceptors? It detects chemicals coming from something that you're smelling. Remember this. And the receptors here are called olfactory receptors. Where are these olfactory receptors? It's in your nose, right here, in your nose. And then it will travel, crossing the bone, entering in the skull. It will make a nerve called olfactory nerve, and this will go to the brain so that you feel it. Uh, olfaction, taste and smell, which is olfaction, both of those are chemicals. Why did you call it chemoreceptors? Taste depend on chemoreceptors. Smelling, chemoreceptors. Sound waves. What kind of receptors is that? This is the most important thing, by the way. Most important. What count as mechanoreceptors? What count as chemoreceptors and why? This is the most important thing. Like chemoreceptors, I talked about it. Chemoreceptors, carotid and aortic body, ear, and your arteries, smell, taste. All three are chemo. Nosi means pain, can be somatic, can be visceral. Sound, what kind of movement is that? Mechano, mechano receptors. Why? Because the sound is basically air waves. You're compressing the air, and this goes into your ear right here, the ear pinna or the auricle. This is called auricle. It goes in, it funnels in, and goes all the way until it finds the eardrum, which is called tympanic membrane, and it's going to move, producing mechanical movement. So what kind of receptors? Mechanical. Look at this. The airwaves, which sound is airwaves. That's it. Sound is compressed airwaves. It goes in. This is your auricle, the outside part, the auricle, and it will go inside this auditory tube, auditory canal. And look at this. You will need to know these details, by the way. It's coming, but you need to know the details. And this is, I put it in the labeling project that you guys need to do. And you are responsible for it as well in your exam. You can't see pictures like these because basics. So let's say the ear is three parts. This outer ear, which is this part right here, which is the auricle or pinna. This, which is the auditory canal, and it end here. When you see the eardrum, what's the other name for the eardrum? Tympanic membrane. That's the end of the outer one. Inside, next, here, this is the middle ear, which contain these tiny bones. And then this organ right here, this is the inner ear. So here is the sound waves coming. It funnel in from your auricle or your outer ear here, go through auditory canal, and end at the eardrum, also known as tympanic membrane. So until here, this is the outer ear. Middle ear is next. Start from the inside of this eardrum or tympanic membrane, and it is three tiny bones. Tiny bones are called ossicles. Tiny bone, ossicles. This one here is called malleus, which is hammer. It looks like hammer, like this is the handle attached to the eardrum or the tympanic membrane, and this is the head. So this is malleus or hammer. Next one, incus, because it looks like an anvil. Last one, look at this. This looks like the stirrup, like if you're riding a horse, you put your foot on it, and this is called the stapes. Malleus, incus, stapes, M-I-S. From outside, starting from the tympanic membrane, M-I-S. Like Miss USA, Miss Universe, M-I-S. To help you remember it, M-I-S. Malleus, incus, stapes. At the end of the stapes, that's it. The middle ear is over. But before we move, this space here is called the middle ear cavity, and there is a tube here connecting it to your pharynx and also to your mouth. This is called eustachian tube. And this is the one that if you're like in the aeroplane or something, and all of a sudden they change the height, they move up or down. You can feel this tinnitus sensation or this pain sensation, and they tell you, like, if you ask, what should I do now? They tell you, like, chew a gum or open your mouth wide. You do like this. This is because you're opening this eustachian tube, that's this one. It open and close so that the pressure from this side, which is always open from the ear here, and the pressure from your mouth that goes in through this eustachian tube, and this eustachian tube open and close. If this closed, the pressure outside is not at the same as the pressure inside, and this will stretch your eardrum, and this is how you feel like this tinnitus sensation or pressure sensation or pain sometimes. You feel it because the pressure on either sides of the eardrum or the tympanic membrane is different, because here it's open through your ears to the atmosphere, right? To the airplane, to the atmosphere. But the other side is not, because the eustachian tube closed. So this is higher than this. It pushes and stretches. To overcome this, when you open your mouth wide or when you chew a gum, this eustachian tube will open. So from your mouth to the eustachian tube to the middle ear cavity, so this side will be connected to the atmospheric pressure as well, to the atmosphere. So atmospheric pressure here, you're fine now. And this is the importance of the eustachian tube, also known as auditory tube. Inner ear is three main parts, and all three are covered by bone. This snail-shaped part called the cochlea, and this is for hearing, and these are mechanoreceptors. Hearing. You will be asked about this. Basics. What's the inner ear? Cochlea, the snail-shaped. Semicircular canals. Look at these. 1, 2, 3 semicircular canals. And this part in between here is called the vestibule. Cochlea, semicircular canals, and in between is the vestibule. Cochlea for hearing, mechanoreceptors. Semicircular canal, these canals here are for what? For equilibrium balance. How about the vestibule? Equilibrium and balance as well. They do it in different ways, but both of them together, we call it the vestibular apparatus. There are hair cells inside your ear, inside your inner ear, like inside this. And these are the ones when you hear something like the airwaves goes in, moving this eardrum, moving malleus, moving incus, moving stapes. The stapes here will fit inside a window that's have the same shape. Look at how oval it is. So it is the oval window. This is the oval window right here. By the way, this is wrong. This should not be the oval. This is round. You should fix it in your slides, because oval window fits this oval stapes. And this oval stapes, look at this. You can see in the camera, this head of the stapes here, it will push fluid inside this inner ear, and this fluid will move the hair cells, which look like hair, and this will end up producing the sound signal. And this sound signal will travel through this nerve right here, which is auditory nerve or vestibulocochlear nerve, that will take the signal all the way to the brain. So what's hearing? It's a perception of sound waves. What are the cells that work as receptors? Hair cells. And where are these hair cells for hearing? Where is it? In the cochlea, because cochlea is for hearing. And these hair cells, you're going to bend it. When the fluid moves, it's going to bend the hair cells, creating this signal. It will end up, let me go here back. This nerve here will take it all the way to this temporal lobe. Remember, I told you temporal lobe was for hearing and occipital lobe is for vision. If you forgot it, your ear is located on the temporal bone. So temporal region is responsible for hearing. That's if you forgot it. This in the back is for vision. So what this nerve goes to? It go in different steps. We're not going to go through that, but all the way until it end up going to the cortex. Which part of the cortex? Temporal lobe. Temporal lobe right here. So is our ear is only responsible for hearing? No, hearing and equilibrium, which is balance. Equilibrium, balance, same thing. Equilibrium and balance. Okay? And that's why, if you ever heard about this, sometimes if you heard somebody saying, I don't, I have like imbalance and I can't stand still. I feel like I'm going to fall, or I feel like the room around me is spinning or stuff like that. So what's happening here? Is it my brain? What is it? No, actually, it's your inner ear, because your inner ear is responsible for balance and equilibrium together with other things. But this is not our focus today. I'm just talking about the ear now. So is the ear only for hearing? No. Hearing plus balance, also known as equilibrium. Balance, equilibrium. So look at this again. These canals right here. All of this is filled by fluid, by the way. Look at this, the oval window. This is where the stapes fits in, and when it move, it push the fluid, and the fluid is going to bend these hair cells like this here. So cochlea contain hair cells for what? Hearing. Semicircular canals and vestibule, both of those contain receptors for equilibrium or balance, and we call them together vestibular apparatus. Here are the semicircular canals that I've been talking about, which are these canals right here, semicircular canals. So here are the, if we're talking about, we talked about hearing, and hearing fluid move, bending the hair cells, creating hearing signal that leave the cochlea and go through the auditory or vestibulocochlear nerve to the temporal lobe. At the same time, we also get that balance sensation or equilibrium. And it is the same idea when you move, it's a mechanical movement. So there is like something here that's like jello-like, and there is something like on top of it, like it's called otolith, something like very tiny calcium uh, structures, calcium containing structures. So when you move, you're going to bend the cells, and you will get that balance sensation. And that's why we hear about the motion sickness. Motion sickness is if you overstimulate the hair cells responsible for balance. If you stimulate them, you will feel this motion sickness, and you feel like you cannot keep your balance. There is an issue happening because of overstimulation of your hair receptors. So balance is the sense of natural position. That's called balance. What's responsible for balance? Vestibular apparatus. What's the vestibular apparatus? Semicircular canals and vestibule. They contain fluid. Semicircular canal um, lies in three planes. What's the three planes? Here it is. Look, one in one plane, two, three. Each one of those is going in different plane. And that's how you detect, like if I go like this, round, or I can go like right, left, like this, or like this. There are semicircular canals, three-dimensional. Each one of them is in a different dimension or in a different plane that it can detect what you're doing or what your position. Otolith are these stones, tiny stones, um, that bend to the hair cells, and when the hair cells bend, you create uh, this action. Okay, the next will be the vision, and um, I'm going to stop here. This will be part one. This is for the we stopped at the vision here, so it's the eye, and we will talk about the eye Thursday. So we will finish remaining part Thursday. Right. So let me stop here.